Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Welcome to the Supply Chain Sustainability Stories session here at SupplySide West. My name is Karen Ratterman. I'm Associate Director of Content Development, Associate Director for Content Marketing at SupplySide. And before we get started, I just want to say, mention a few quick housekeeping notes. You probably saw on the slide earlier that we would like you to silence your cell phones. We have a great program today. You're not going to want to miss anything, so we appreciate if you do that. Thank you again for joining us today. We have a great program planned for you. I'm very excited to be a part of the sustainability discussion. Before we begin, though, I want to tell you a little bit about the Supply Chain Sustainability Stories program. This is a new program that we launched just this year, and it's similar to some other programs that we do. You may have heard of Inside the Bottle and Inside Organic, and it's designed to tell the stories of suppliers committing to sustainable business practices. These companies represent the very best of the industry around sustainability, and they're working to build thought leadership around sustainable ideals and create community among like-minded companies to collaborate, to share ideas, and elevate sustainability across the supply chain. So it is a very broad concept. We have talked about a lot of different things throughout the year. They include sustainable and regenerative agriculture, protecting plant biodiversity, responsible resource usage, and much, much more, because we know there really is a lot to unpack. So I would like to start out by thanking our 2024 inaugural partners for being a part of this. They are Cargill, Indena, K. Patel Phyto Extractions, and Microfeed. They've offered counsel to us on this content, thought leadership around these issues, and they're leading important industry conversations and efforts across the spectrum. So thank you to them for their commitment to this vision and support for this important content. So one of the reasons that we developed this program is because we realized that many suppliers in our industry really were making a lot of great efforts and with sustainability, but not necessarily getting as much recognition as they should. So at the same time, a lot of brands were kind of taking a wait and see approach. But I believe the time has come to jump all in on sustainability. And I'm going to tell you a couple of reasons why I think that is. First of all, consumers are really embracing this idea. It's intricately tied to our changing climate, for one thing. So in a 2024 study from Bain & Company, they surveyed about 19,000 consumers in 10 different countries, and they reported that 60% of consumers are now concerned about climate change, and their concerns are rising. And one of the reasons for that is because they've had some kind of an experience with a severe event, a severe weather event. So, and I think as we've seen this year, that may start to go up even more. The same study also reported that 76% of consumers now believe they should lead a sustainable lifestyle because they believe it has impact. And that number here in the United States is around 70%. So, additionally, the data is also showing that products produced sustainability are making up about 1/3 of all the growth in the overall CPG industry. That's data from Nielsen IQ. And then furthermore, those products that are making claims around the environment, social, and governance efforts are growing at a higher rate than those that are not. So what all this means is there is great opportunity in this area, but also some challenges. And it's a very complicated picture. Now, many companies don't even know where to begin. So that's kind of what this session is about today, to help companies move forward with sustainability from wherever they are. So we have a great panel of experts to do that today. They're going to offer us insights on the shifting consumer attitudes about sustainability and how those trends are impacting the market. We'll discuss methods to track sustainability efforts and effective ways to communicate those results from the measures you're taking. And then we're going to finish off with the story of one sustainability brand and learn how they established their priorities and overcame the challenges to achieve their sustainability goals. So, and then time permitting, we will take some questions from the audience and do a Q&A with the whole panel. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to our first speaker. We're going to gain some insights in the U.S. sustainability consumer from Diane Ray. She is VP of Strategic Innovation at the Natural Marketing Institute. Diane has been involved in NMI's sustainability report. They've been doing that for about 20 years, and she has lots of great insights on how these attitudes are shifting and what's resonating with these consumers. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Diane.
Thank you, Karen. I feel this is a bit like church where everybody sits in the back row. Like, people should come to the front so that we can make some eye contact while we're doing this. Let's see where we're going here. Here we go. My job today is to give you a little bit of an overview of where consumers stand, where their attitudes, how much energy do they really have for sustainability, and what's the impetus for new products and businesses shifting how they do business in order to be more sustainable. So I do work for the Natural Marketing Institute. We are a division of Research America, Inc., which is a much broader company. We've been in the health and wellness sustainability space for almost 30 years. The data we're going to talk about today comes from our U.S. Sustainable Consumer Trends database, long word. This is 2024 data, and it's about 4,000 consumers in the U.S. So it's a GenPop sample, so we get a really good cross-section of who everybody is and why they think and behave the way they do. There's a lot of additional data mining you could do through that database if you have an interest, so feel free to reach out after the show. We're going to talk for a second about segmentation, and we'll refer to this a little bit in the data as we go through. There are 5 kind of attitudinal and behavioral segments around sustainability in the US. Everyone's heard about the LOHAS consumer, and I have to say we coined that phrase many, many years ago, and when people started to use it, there was a big discussion. Do we pursue them and for trademark infringement, or we just say, let it go. It's going to be a much better term if everybody's using it. Stands for Lifestyles of Health and Sustainability, and it's that combination of personal health and planetary health. We have a group called Naturalites that are all about sustainability as it relates to their personal health. So they don't necessarily care about what's happening around the world, what's happening in the atmosphere. They want organic foods. They want things that are going to have no pesticides, things that are going to affect their personal health. You've got drifters, who are right now the majority of the population, and they are, as their name implies, they kind of hop around on what's the latest, hottest event. It doesn't exactly correlate to millennials, but there is certainly an overlap in demographics and attitudes. And I watch my daughter and her friends, who are right in that 30-something group, even though leading edge millennials now are in their late 40s, believe it or not. But I watch what they do, and they're still a bit cash constrained. They're out of school, they're working, they're just kind of getting themselves set up, right? So they'll say, we believe in this, and then I watch what purchases they make, and I said, how come you're buying that? And they're like, well, that's all I can afford, right? So they'll trade off on certain things, but not on everything. Conventionals are an interesting kind of late to the table sustainability group. They're driven most often by their pocketbook. Right, so they'll buy hybrid cars. They were some of the first people to buy hybrid cars because they could save money on gas. First people to buy into solar because over the long term it's saving me on the energy costs for my home. Right, so they're doing sustainability things, but driven by the practicality of it. And I think they're becoming more motivated by the bigger picture economics of sustainability. So if you can show that what you're doing is going to actually make financial sense over the long haul, they're right there with you. And then unconcerned. They're just unconcerned. They're just going to be along for the ride. So let's run through some very quick trends. So I know when COVID hit, we had a lot of clients who called up and said, are we going to lose sustainability impetus? Is it going to go away because everybody's so switched to immediate health concerns? And we said, great question, don't know. Obviously, some people shifted away, but most people actually doubled down. And they said, you know what? Personal health is super important at this exact moment, but that is a symptom of the bigger planetary health. So we have to continue to do what we're doing. So 64% of the Gen Pop feels that they're more personally responsible for protecting the environment than they did in the past. That's a huge growth. So it's becoming not they have to do it, but we have to do it. So that's a great trend. People do still question, what can I personally do? I mean, everyone, years ago, that segmentation was differentiated by things like recycling behavior, and now almost every community mandates recycling, so it's no longer a differentiating behavior, but it's those kinds of things that are there. And there's also the social sustainability as well as the planetary sustainability. That's all part of the conversation for consumers. During this time, we saw what shifted, and there's a lot of positive impacts, right? People are feeling more responsible, they're becoming more environmentally conscious, they're more concerned about all these things. At the same time, we see the cost concerns, right? I can't afford to do things. This eco-friendly laundry detergent is 3 times the cost of the non-eco-friendly one. Can I afford that for my family, right? So people are balancing and they're trading off along the lines. So we know that sustainability conscious consumers account for a huge percentage of the fast-moving consumer good market. So they were estimated to be 500 billion last year, projected to reach over $1 trillion by 2027. So that's a significant piece of the marketplace that you can't ignore. And people say, well, they don't care, we'll just do what we want to do, but over time, it's going to really shift the market. The words eco, economize, ecological, right, economical is still in there. And it's this union of financial sustainability and planetary sustainability that's going to win the day going forward. If you look at some of the behaviors that people feel they can do in their own backyard, right? Things that I can control. It's water conservation. Certainly, if you're paying for water, people are wanting to conserve. I know I've seen some work on the meters that are going on in California, where individual households, even in an apartment complex, are now being billed directly for their individual water consumption. It's amazing how much your consumption goes down when you're actually paying for it yourself. And to me, some of these they seem little, but over time they add up. Right? Cold water, people buying organically grown products, home energy meters, so lots of things that we're using technology for to help us manage our consumption of energy in particular. So those are things that we're doing at a small scale. This idea of organic and the personal health piece, 79% of the GP now qualify as an organic user, so they purchased an organic product in their household in the last 30 days. Mostly it's fruits and vegetables, but there's certainly the prevalence now of organic foods in packaged foods in the center of store is a huge piece of it. Recently, almost a quarter, 16% of these light-duty vehicles are now hybrid vehicles. I live in a very remote corner of Maine, and I know it's mandatory now that you have to have electric outlets in like all the corner stores, that kind of thing. I mean, you have to drive 40 minutes to get to a cinema from where I live, right, to go to the movies. Electric vehicles don't seem practical, but we have some in the neighborhood, so it'll be interesting to see how that evolves over time. So if we talk about certifications, right, everybody says, if I get this cert, that's going to help my product, it's going to help me talk about my business moving forward. There's certainly a lot of confusion. There's such an abundance of sustainability certifications right now that I won't say they don't add value, but you have to be very selective in which certifications you're getting for your product. How is it relevant to what I'm doing with my particular business, and how am I messaging that to my customers and my consumers? Right? There's some talk about, and there is over 450 sustainable logos around the world. And if you're a consumer, you're like, what the hell, right? How do I know this is any good? How do I believe in it? My daughter is a human rights attorney, but I got a lecture the other day on why everything, what the flaws in fair trade, the flaws in this, like why they're all basically not doing what they say they're doing. I told her she didn't have all the information, but you can't tell young lawyers anything, they know everything. But there's opportunities. What about the land to market certification, outcome-based certification? We're going to talk in a second about outcome because impact is what consumers are looking for. They love to hear the story of what you're doing, but they want to know that it's changing something. Don't just tell me you're greening your fleet, you're running your plant now with renewable energy sources, you're recycling your office waste, and we're still having the highest greenhouse gas emissions ever. So these two things don't line up. What are you doing that actually has impact? And does your certification support that? Are there automated carbon footprint? Are there ways to measure your carbon footprint more automatically so that consumers can actually believe that what you're measuring and what you're talking about is actually a good thing? Over 2/3 of the population want a universal certification. Is there one thing that's going to help us believe that this can actually be sustainable? So there's lots of opportunities here in certification. We talked about greenwashing. A lot of people feel that people greenwash, right? They put some certification on their product just so I will buy it. That nobody in this room, of course, does that. I'm sure none of you do that. If something is another 56%, so almost 2/3 say, yeah, I'm more likely to buy your product if it has that seal. So the seals do have impact. It's up to you to make sure it's authentic and it's actually delivering what it says it's going to do. And about another third say, I can't tell, right? The seal doesn't tell me anything. It's not useful for me. Quick look at which seals have been growing. The green lines on the right are the growth in the last 7 years, and then the column on the far left is the percentage of the population that recognize it and either totally or somewhat understand it. Right, so you can kind of see where people are aware and understand, and then what's really been growing over time. So if we look at where consumers' mindsets are, even 10 years ago, it was all the other people, right? It's their problem, the government has to fix it, big companies have to fix it. Now consumers are becoming more fatalistic, but they're also becoming more engaged, right? And maybe it's too many of those post-apocalyptic movies, right, where the world is imploding, and you see those, and people start to take those to heart. You're laughing, I can see you smiling. My son was very young when some movie came out about the end of the world, right? He didn't sleep for a month, and we had to be careful because he takes things literally, very literal. But people are worried about, during COVID, the plastics in the ocean stories certainly exploded. We do a lot of work around the world, and in England, especially in the UK, because they're an island, they're surrounded by the ocean. That was huge. It was in every single media story. It was constantly out there. I think it took people's eyes off COVID a little bit. Let's talk about something else that's going wrong. Let's talk about plastics in the ocean and how we can fix it. Microplastics, diseases. These are all things that people are extremely or very concerned about as potential for destroying the earth as we know it. Right? So this fatalistic approach is growing, but it's also forcing people to become more engaged, which is the good part. So can you leverage this eco-anxiety for action without crossing that line over to despair, right? Because there's a fine line between there's nothing I can do, it's going to happen without me, I just give up, versus I'm motivated to take action. So the challenge for the industry is how do we help people take action? Right? So only 17% believe we passed the tipping point. Another quarter believe it's right now. Another third say it's coming. Right? So it is in the next 10 years. In our lifetime, we will see the tipping point of the planet. So people are understanding that yes, you can regenerate pieces of the planet, but there's stuff that you can't do. Right? So regenerative ag is something that is becoming more and more popular. Consumers are just starting to explore. It's been in the industry conversation for probably 5 or 6 years now. But consumers are just starting to latch onto it and figure out what that means. So there's opportunity there for both product sourcing and communicating that. Only about a third are optimistic that we can do anything. So we don't want to cross that tipping line, but we have to have impact, right? And if you can talk about what you're doing having actual impact, then there's hope, and then people will engage and move forward. I do like Leah Thomas's quote that said, look, if all you keep doing is infusing fear into the climate change conversation, it's going to prevent hope, and hope is what inspires worthwhile actions. So how do we not drive to despair? How do we instead drive to positive impact and hope? So within your sphere of influence, what is it that you can do? All right, certainly if you think about agriculture, there's healthy soil, healthy life, there's regen. These are just examples, and I'm using some big company examples because sometimes big companies can have big impact, right? I'm not saying they're doing everything right, but there's certainly things that they are doing that certainly we could learn from, right? So they want to source 100% of their materials by 2030. That's 7 million acres sustainably farmed. That's a lot. I remember maybe 5 years ago, I think it was General Mills who talked about we're going to do 1 million acres in regenerative ag, and people were like, yay! I'm like, 1 million acres is like a drop in the bucket for national agriculture. So how do we up that, make that scale bigger, make it much more impactful, and how do we cross the line from regen to regenerative organic? But they're taking action. Walmart, which I've got a lot of family members who just go every time you say Walmart. So they're looking at regenerative farming investments all around the world with their supply chain. And because they have a huge supply chain, they have potential for huge impact. So they're doing a lot of work, engaging 30,000 farming operations in regenerative ag. So there's potential there. I'm not saying it's all working, right? Keurig, the French luxury brand, is doing work with a regenerative fund for nature. And they're doing it with NGOs, farming groups all around the world in multiple countries to see if they can make change. So it's not just US driven, right? This has got to be a multi-country initiative. And if you look at every one of these, they're doing it in partnership with somebody else, right? So USAID is working there, the Midwest Row Crop Collaboration is working at the Regenerative Fund for Nature. So no one's doing it alone. It's got to be a collaborative effort to move ahead and actually make impact. So what I challenge you, what is your sphere of influence? We talk about recycling, and I would argue that recycling is not the solution. Can we upcycle? Can we use less? All right, there's companies here that are looking at new sources. You know, what about solutions from packaging from seaweed and plants that dissolve, so you don't even have to recycle them, they just break down on their own. Princeton is looking at this aerogel, which is a material that can remove microplastics from the ocean. What if we could fix the problem? What if a Cup of Noodles, which is a Nissan brand, is looking at a new paper cup design that replaces all the polystyrene cups? I would argue it's late, but better late than never on some of these products. Right? Dr. Bronner's is doing refills in the store, so you don't even have to have packaging. You can just bring your container and refill it and leave it. So there's interesting creative solutions that you can do within your sphere of influence, and I challenge you to think outside the box. What if it's a little bit closer to home? And causes. Right? If we look at food and type purchasers, when I see a company that sponsors a cause, so not necessarily a sustainability effort, but some kind of a cause, I'm more likely to buy its products, right? So you've got the organic food user, vegetarians, fair trade users are much more likely than Gen Pop to support a cause. People who are purchasing brands like Green Mountain, Organic Valley, The Honest Company, or Method, much more likely to support a cause. Even if you shop certain retail chains, you're more likely to support a cause, right? So there's interesting studies done with retailers and brands. If they partner together on causes, it can be a win-win for everybody involved. And I do like the Subaru Love Your Pet campaign. They are now responsible for the adoption of 350,000 animals, which is pretty cool. I love the animals. So it is good business. I'm going to zoom here through these really quickly. If you're doing the right things, people are much more likely to buy your products. They're more likely to buy them repeatedly. They're more likely to talk with their friends and family about your products. And they're much less concerned about the price of your product if they know that you're doing the right thing. So it's good business inherently. So where is your sphere of influence, right? Is it plant-based food and ag? Is it removing ocean contamination? Is it fixing the methane gas problem? What is it? What about end-of-life resource recapture, right? There's all kinds of things you could be doing. So I'm just challenging you to take action that has impact, which in turn gives hope to the rest of the population. So thank you. That red light is intimidating.
Diane, thanks so much. As always, really intriguing stuff. So we're going to move right along here. Next, we're going to take a look at how these attitudes are surfacing in the marketplace itself and translating into trends. So for that, we have some data and insights from Spins. And Isabella Davis is supplier of growth manager at Spins, and she has some thoughts about how sustainability is gaining momentum in the marketplace and how companies, what she sees as companies increase their efforts to introduce and market these sustainable products. So, Isabella, come on up.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Diane. That was a lot of data. I am also about to present a lot of data, but I'll try to make it fun. Let's see here. All right. My topic is on sustainable ingredients. Riveting, I know. Now, I don't want to talk about myself too much, but I feel like I need to let you guys know that I am part of Ex-Vegans Anonymous. So I feel like I have to acknowledge that to the group here. I know a lot of people in this room have dedicated their life to sustainability. I'm sure we have PhDs in the audience, people who have started brands. I work for Spins. Spins is a point of sale data provider. We get data from grocery stores all across the country. We work with brands like Olipop. We work with grocery stores like Sprouts, Walmart, Target, even Amazon. And we're able to license that point of sale data to ingredient suppliers, contract manufacturers, private equity firms, distributors, really anyone who can benefit any type of business that needs to understand what's selling, what's trending, and what's not. So Spins kind of sits in the middle of this universe here. So when we get this raw data from the grocery stores, every time a product gets scanned, the UPC code inherently contains some information. It has the name of the product. However, it's very raw data. And so what we do is we use machine learning and submission of the product images to create a database that's all coded by ingredients, by certifications, claims being made on the label, types of packaging. And we're able to share that data back to the retailers who gave it to us so that they know how to stock their shelves. As I said, we're also able to share it to other businesses who need to use the data to inform their strategy. So we code for 300 different types of attributes. Today I'm going to talk about certifications, I'm going to talk about ingredients, and I'm going to talk about packaging. So first, I picked a couple of certifications. I want to make it known that we code for lots of other types of certifications, but I picked these two because they're growing a lot. So on the left, we have certified upcycled. This is a certification that says the product or the raw material of the product would have otherwise been wasted, and now it has been turned into something that can be used and can be eaten. So the upcycled certification, whether you believe in it or not, I'm an unbiased opinion just to tell you how it's performing, how finished products with this certification are performing. This is data from the latest 52 weeks compared to a year ago across all of retail in the US. It's growing 29%. We were at $34.4 million worth of finished product sales at this time last year, and now we're at 52.4. That's really strong growth. Regenerative Organic Certified, ROC. This is your level up to organic. It's not just organic made without pesticides, it's actually benefiting and regenerating the soil. And that is growing at 15%. $146 million worth of sales, finished products this time last year, 168.8 million now. So I picked a few items just to show some examples because I'm a visual person as well. So Harmless Harvest, they're a coconut water brand. They have this beautiful pink coconut water that became very popular, and they are now doing coconut yogurt using the meat from the coconuts that otherwise would have been waste. They have this yogurt here, and then they have a drinkable one, and those products are doing really well. So amongst the entire upcycled certification world, that Harmless Harvest product is at the top. It has the most share in terms of any product that has that certification. Another brand I wanted to highlight here is 7 Sundays. When I was vegan, they used to sponsor my Instagram. I'm no longer vegan, so they do not do that. But they're putting as upcycled sunflower protein, potentially from maybe it's another type of sunflower oil or another product, and they're able to extract protein from the raw material that's left over from that extraction. And they're adding it to their cereal for added plant-based protein. On the right, we have some of the growing items. So I saw these Flock chicken skin chips. So this brand has partnered with farmers across the United States who are creating products that are chicken breasts and things without the skin, and they're taking the skin that would have otherwise been wasted and creating chips out of it. I think that's genius. I had some chicken skin just the other night at a restaurant. It was delicious. Ex-Vegan Anonymous. Then we have this chia product, Chia Smash. This is with blueberries that would have not been pretty enough or too smashed or damaged in order to go into a blueberry container. So they're making jam out of it. Those are some of the growing items that don't have much share right now, but they probably will pick up and do well. For regenerative organic, it is Ancient Nutrition that leads the charge in this certification by a long shot. Ancient Nutrition is a supplement brand founded by Dr. Jordan Rubin, and owned by Jordan Rubin, founded by Dr. Josh Axe. They have a farm out in Tennessee. They grow most of their products and raise even their cows for their collagen there in Tennessee. So there's a lot of vertical integration going on at that company, and a lot of their products are certified regenerative organic. They've got this regenerative lion's mane mushroom in their product. And then on the right, we have the growing items. I featured Alex Ice Cream. They've partnered with a coffee company in Los Angeles. And it's just the coffee in the coffee flavored ice cream that is regenerative organic. But they're able to talk about that in their marketing. And that brings a lot of attention to their brand. All right, now we're gonna get into some ingredients. So first of all, algae. I think algae in all of its different variations and all of the different applications that algae has, it's one of my just top sustainable ingredients if you ask me what's the biggest sustainable ingredient, because there's algae found in omega-3 supplement products being used as a source of omegas. There's also sea moss, which is a supplement product picking up a lot of growth right now. And then spirulina, chlorella, those are always growing strong in the powders, in the beverages as well. And then seaweed snacks are great. Another one of my favorites is buckwheat. This is a great gluten-free alternative. It tastes great in muffins, pancakes. About a year ago, if you were to look in the breakfast category, it was growing in double, triple digits there. Now it's kind of going towards flattening out, or it's a more mature market, but we're still seeing 8% growth in cold cereals that are adding buckwheat. Snacking, flours and baking mixes up 25%. 41% growth year over year in crackers and crisp breads containing buckwheat. Buckwheat has a short growing cycle, it's favorable, returns nutrients to the soil, and we also see some innovation happening with interesting tea products made from buckwheat and soba. Pea protein makes me gassy, but as an ex-vegan, I used to eat a lot of pea protein. And it's increasingly being used in products to add protein to the product without changing the taste. So breakfast, we have 34% in granola and muesli, 17% growth in plant-based yogurts that have added pea protein. So if you had access to the entire library of SPINS data, you could compare all of these numbers with just the category itself. Yes, all of these numbers that I'm sharing, they're growing faster than the categories themselves. So plant-based yogurt is not growing at 17%. It's growing at something lower than that. But plant-based yogurts with pea protein, 17% lift year over year. They're even adding pea protein to pasta to add more protein to the finished product. The last ingredient that I'm gonna highlight is collagen. When I was asked to do this presentation on sustainable ingredients, collagen was the first ingredient that came to mind for me, because I've always wondered, since collagen has gotten so popular, isn't it an upcycled product? Isn't it a waste product of the animal agriculture industry? Turns out most of it today is not. However, I heard a rumor that Vital Proteins, all of their collagen is waste product. And they sort of led the charge in flipping that narrative and saying, let's take this waste product and position it as something amazing for beauty and for joints. And now we're actually starting to see ingredient suppliers like Nura market an upcycled, branded collagen. And we're seeing brands talk about how they partner with farmers across the country to get their waste product and turn it into collagen. And so while collagen originally, it was kind of a secret that this was an upcycled waste product and nobody wanted to talk about it. I think we're moving towards actually starting to talk about how collagen is a waste product and make that a good thing, not a bad thing. And then finally, with packaging, I just have one slide on packaging because we're going to hear so much more about packaging. But in terms of moving away from plastic, the category where we're seeing that shift the most is soda. So moving from plastic soda bottles to aluminum. We see some other categories here that are having a shift. Milk, yogurt, sparkling water, soap and body wash. Feel free to take pictures of the slides. Also, I'll put my email at the last slide. You can send me, you get a copy. This is a slide my team put together, the entirety of Spins. We're 300 or 400 people, work with tons of brands and tons of companies across the space, from startups all the way to your Pepsi and your Nestle. And this is their opinion of what to watch out for in terms of sustainability. So there are some new grains, kernza and cascara, apricot kernel being used in plant-based milks, biodegradable floss, other products from Dr. Bronner's with biodegradable packaging. So as these continue to grow and materialize in the market, maybe next year you will see some big growth numbers on those ingredients and those types of packaging as well. So if you'd like to talk more about sustainable ingredients, packaging, or anything, have any questions about the data I shared in my presentation, my email is idavis@spins.com. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Isabella. Really appreciate it. So now that you kind of have an understanding of what the marketplace looks like, we're going to get a bit more into the weeds of implementation and tracking results. And for that, we have Crystal Granger, who is Director of Growth and Innovation at HowGood. HowGood is a company that helps suppliers and brands implement and track their sustainability efforts. Crystal has worked alongside many global supply chain companies and sustainability experts, and she's going to give us some perspective on the challenges and successes that they're having. So,
Thank you.
Crystal.
Thanks, Karen, for inviting me to be the comedic relief for this presentation. I am by no means a sustainability expert. You can call me a sustainability enthusiast, which I'm imagining some of, not most of you, are also, as you were part of this presentation. So, as Karen mentioned, you heard a little bit about what's driving the consumer demand, how we capture that consumer demand. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the stories themselves, how you put sustainability at the forefront of all of your conversations, regardless if you're a supplier, a retailer, a distributor, or otherwise, because I've seen it all and I have some stories to tell, which, by the way, if you want to talk a little bit more about your business or want to hear about those stories in more detail, please come find me at our booth. I do terrible in front of a crowd, so you're going to get C-grade Crystal here. You'll get A-grade if you come see me in person. So talking a little bit about sustainability in the supply chain. First and foremost, what does it mean? What is a supply chain? Does it include me as a supplier? I do ingredients, I do nutraceuticals. Like, how do I fit into all of this? So first and foremost, HowGood is a sustainability intelligence platform, which is a really fancy way of saying that we have a huge database of sustainability data that we source and vet and research methodology for you so that you don't have to. We have a nice piece of software that sits on top of it that makes it user-friendly. But essentially, if you think of data as this common thread that connects companies throughout the supply chain, that's HowGood. We're that sustainability data partner for companies that want to collaborate, because it is not a one-person game. If you look at, for example, the annual Whole Foods report on sustainability, you'll see some information on carbon, you'll see information on things like water usage and biodiversity. But if you really dig into the meat and potato of that report, what you see, or at least what I see and how I can help you translate,
is a lot of collaboration. It takes a village. Whole Foods doesn't wake up and have their sustainability goals figured out and solutioned. They have to collaborate with their supply chain in order to do so. And so my role at HowGood, and frankly, my mission as a human on this planet, is not just to connect those companies and use sustainability at the forefront, but to start at the beginning. And excuse my French in advance, but shit rolls downhill or uphill in this example. So I frequently work with farmers and ranchers and growers and those people who get a lot less opportunity than some of us, but have a lot more responsibility in supporting that global food supply chain. So what is collaboration? It's partnering with your suppliers. Whether you're a supplier yourself or whether you're a grower, in some capacity you are working with another group or individual in order for you to do business. You then sell that business to somebody like Whole Foods, for example, and in order for those dots to connect and in order for everyone to build a sustainability strategy, they have to work together. Like you'll frequently hear me in HowGood in general talk about like bolstering relationships, or supporting collaboration. And it's not just a warm and fuzzy way of saying, give me your information so that I can report it to a regulatory body. It's really in order for us to build out the sustainability of our businesses and to support that global food supply chain, we have to collaborate, and it takes a village. If you talk to one of my colleagues and myself, we'll probably tell you that the majority of the folks that we work with are in sustainability. But right after that is procurement or strategy or commercialization or sales and marketing. So you'll notice that within this whole responsibility of sustainability, it doesn't just fall on one person's shoulders. And that's how we teach sustainability, and that's how we teach collaboration at HowGood as well, is from multiple angles with multiple sources of responsibility. So sustainability in practice, and specifically as it relates to the supply chain, also means complying with regulation. So taking Whole Foods for an example, they're a global company, publicly traded with a global footprint. They have a regulatory requirement in both the US as well as internationally in order to not just measure their sustainability, but start to set reduction goals. If you're a supplier and you've sold something to a customer within your supply chain and haven't been asked any questions about how you manufacture or source your own products, it's gonna come. HowGoods is already doing that, Whole Foods is already doing that. HowGood partners with 6 of the 10 largest international retailers and CPGs, like the Danones, like the Nestle's, like the Whole Foods. And we are the vehicle in which they ask for that information from suppliers like you. So again, if no one's tapped you on the shoulder and said, hey, I need some information about how you're sourcing your products, they eventually will. So take this term regulation really loosely. Like for some of us in Whole Foods, for another example, that is a regulatory body like FINRA, like the SEC, like CSRD, somebody who's requiring information. But it also use it a little bit more loosely in terms of supply chain engagement and supply chain collaboration. You might not have a financial requirement to report your sustainability story, but your customer might be asking for it. And if you're not able to answer or not able to at least wordsmith a really fun story about how you're gonna get that information, then your competitors will, and I'm telling you they're already doing that. So make sure that whether your regulator is your customer, is your internal stakeholder, is an actual regulatory body, make sure you're complying with those requests or those regulations. And I can't stand here on stage and tell you how to do that because I don't know you and I don't know your business. But if you want to talk about it a little bit, I can give you, as a sustainability enthusiast and a person who sees these types of requests every single day, what I think best practice and what I think your best path forward could be. And then I like to save this one for last because it's a little bit more like qualitative than it is quantitative. And we are a data company after all, so we typically start with the data. But you've got some brand equity that you can either build or you can propagate and turn into ROI. If you have a certification or if you have a practice that you think could sound really good when you're telling your sustainability story, you're probably onto something, and I can help you substantiate that. So as Diane mentioned, there are a ton of different certifications out there, different logos you can use, and again, all of that comes with quantitative requests for data. being able to kind of put the proof in the pudding. So we want you to build your brand equity. We want you to tell your sustainability story and turn it into ROI, but we also want to be the third-party data partner that helps validate and substantiate all of that. Okay, so kind of going backwards in order of operations here, should have started with how to get started, but there is a method behind the madness. So first and foremost, you gotta establish your priorities. If you're a CEO, you have to understand what's most materially important to your brand. Is it to get a certification, to pay for that certification and to maintain it, to turn it into marketing collateral? Maybe. Maybe it's working behind the scenes with your supply chain to respond to a request that they have about where you're sourcing your tea. Who knows? The point is that you need to figure out what your priorities are as a company, if sustainability even falls into those priorities, and start to understand, okay, what is materially important to my company and how do I begin? I'm one person who stands on the shoulder of giants, and just one person in the drop of the people out there that can help you with your sustainability priorities. If you don't talk to me, that's fine, talk to somebody. Figure out who the best person is, whether it's somebody who sells market data, whether it's someone who helps educate you on certification, or hopefully queuing up for the next presenter, somebody who's actually went through the process themselves. Figure out who can give you the advice and start to establish those priorities. Also, let's not get it twisted, you're gonna have some challenges, whether that's financial or otherwise. Understanding your priorities is also anticipating what type of challenges as a business owner you're potentially going to face. Sometimes that's budget, sometimes that's rhetoric, sometimes that's avoiding greenwashing or green hushing. Understand that you have goals that you're trying to set, but that you might have some challenges. And coming full circle to connecting with somebody who can help you establish those priorities, they'll also likely be the person who can actually help you understand what those challenges are gonna be and how to overcome them. I can't implore heavily enough that this is not just a one person by themselves type of action. And I mean, that's why we do events like Supply Side, is to be able to come together to talk about and to kind of really open up about what some of those challenges are so that people can help you solve them. My mom, who's a very smart lady, told me, don't learn from your mistakes, learn from other people's mistakes. So as you're figuring out what your challenges are, figure out what other people have already figured out for you. And then obviously find the right partner. You can't invite a salesperson to a stage and ask them not to shamelessly plug their business. If you want to talk about how to set priorities, how to get started, and how to figure out what challenges you might face, let's have a conversation. If it's not me, make sure that it's somebody, because again, you can't do this alone. And I think that I've just opened up the floor for plenty of questions to come after the next presentation, so I'm gonna respectfully bow out and give it back to Karen. Thank you all, sincerely.
So now, can you all hear me? Okay, we're going to shift things up just a little bit. Can you advance the slide, please? I don't have the, okay, perfect. As I noted earlier, we are going to finish off today with a conversation with a brand that is actually ahead of the curve when it comes to sustainability. So I would like to welcome Philip Matthew. He's co-founder of Imlakesh Organics and Chi Foods. I knew I was going to say that wrong, but anyway, Philip is at the forefront of the sustainable food revolution. He has a passion for merging environmentalism, design, and technology that has led to the creation of unique and innovative plant-based products that are both good for you and good for the planet. He's an innovator in plant-powered goodness and dedicated to making the world a healthier place, a happier place, and one superfood at a time. So I can't see because I need bifocals, so sorry about that. Anyway, so we're just going to have a conversation about their sustainability journey. So welcome, Philip.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here. You work with some very unique supply chains. So they include Saatchi Inchi and cacao. So tell us about what makes them unique.
Well, first of all, hi everyone, my name is Philip Matthew. Yes, we do work with a super unique nut called Saatchi Inchi nuts. You might not have heard of it. It is starting to show up a little bit more in the market. And then we also work with a lot of cacao products as well. Such Inchi is a really novel nut. I guess I'll give a quick rewind. We've started the companies, like all good stories, with a one-way ticket in a backpack. And chomping through the jungles, the highlands of India and the low country of Peru, really fell in love with farming communities, growing foods that I had tried, I'd never tried. My partner and I both went on our own adventures and came back together and realized we had discovered all these foods that some people knew about, but mostly were just really niche products. And one of them was this Such Inchi nut, which is a super high protein, super high omega-369 fatty acid nut. And we use that as the base for our Chi Foods plant-based meat. But what makes these products regenerative is they're grown and they defy this classic conventional agricultural model, right? They are small shareholder grown, small independent family farms all over perennial rainforest regions. They don't require clear cutting. They don't require, flatland agriculture. They can really grow within the ecosystems in which they adapted. They weren't transplanted into new ecosystems and propagated with irrigation and different things. So by default, certain foods are more likely and easier to be regenerative. And so I think a big question we've asked ourselves when we started our plant-based meat is, where can we have the easiest path to regeneration? And that actually, it's not taking a product and fitting a mold of regeneration around it. It's finding a product and an ingredient source that is innately a better product. It grows easier, it's easier to source, it's easier to grow, it's really high protein, it doesn't require as much extraction. So, and then our cacao products, we all know cacao. It's a top commodity product. And we've redefined how we did that mostly by buying a plot of land and trying it ourselves. And so we have, a 200 hectare cacao property. It grows quite a few different items. I wouldn't call it a farm per se because it's not super high production, but it's part of a co-op. And we learned a lot around what does it take to actually grow a regenerative product. And not clear cutting the forest is really, it's a hard thing not to do, right? It's you want to clear cut the forest to grow cacao better, right? That's why we are in this problem. And so growing a shade-grown cacao and working with different farming communities to understand how to do that well is a little bit harder, significantly harder. But doing it ourselves and being boots on the ground really gave us that angle. So yes, those are two regenerative products that we bring to the market.
Right, and I think you've kind of answered part of my next question, but tell us a little bit about how they differ from ingredients grown using conventional methods like monoculture and industrial systems.
Well, we all can imagine when we think about agriculture, we think of these huge row crops, we think of corn, we think of wheat, we think of soy, and it might take years of education, understanding of why some of these industrial agricultural systems are bad, but I think we can all understand mass growing something in huge swaths and requiring industrial agricultural tools to handle it innately might be the wrong way to scale. And so you look at water input, you look at carbon emissions, you look at food waste, all of those are factors. Now, crop yield is one of the reasons we went in this direction with mass agriculture and monocrops, but that's a very focused lens. And so working with our products is the hectare or the acreage output is not as high if you're growing one crop. So a lot of our farming communities grow 2 or 3 crops, and we're just responsible for purchasing one of those. And so in that agricultural model, you're basically breaking the mold about how to scale the problem. So the other part of this is social and nutrition. A regenerative product is grown better. It has a higher organic agricultural model, and so the nutrition of the food that's coming out is higher. So you're having foods that are coming out that are better for you, they're better for the social environment, and they're better ecologically. So
Awesome. So tell us a bit about Chi Foods and your journey to create the very first certified organic and regenerative plant-based meat. How'd you get started with that, and how'd you go down that road?
well, anyone that's started a brand, you have to be a little bit crazy. I can't actually, it's a really tough place. The CPG world is not one I would recommend for anyone that's faint of heart. It is a very tough space to be in. It is the end of the chain of all the pressures of a supply. So the way we got started with Chi Foods in particular is we had a product, Sachin Chi, and we had a question, which was, how do we move this product to the center of the plate? You can only eat so many nuts, right? You have a nut product. The nut market is, you might know, not outrageously large, right? Nothing like the meat market. And so we kept asking ourselves, how do we get people to eat this food? This food that's amazing for you, it's amazing for the environment. How do we move it to the center of the plate? And then we watched Beyond and Impossible mess up over and over and over, bringing in products that arguably are not great for you. In fact, you're probably better off eating meat than some of these products. And so we watched that, and we had this problem with trying to get more nuts into the American diet, Sachin Chi in particular. And so the two moments came together at a head, and we decided to figure out how to transform Sachin Chi to a plant-based meat, which was an endeavor. And we were able to launch Whole Foods nationwide, the first certified organic plant-based meat, which was super exciting, thank you. And it's been an uphill journey, obviously, supply chain, convincing people that they want a plant-based meat that's organic. There is a slightly higher price point with being organic and regenerative certified. So that was a bit of our journey. We're still in it today, running two brands side by side. Also don't recommend running two brands side by side, but if you have a good team, you have a good partner in the process, you can get anything done.
Awesome. Now, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced as you went down this road?
So, as a brand, our job is to amplify the voice of our supply chain, right? You are really that final touch point of the voice for the consumer. You are the one amplifying the farming practices. You're amplifying any of the packaging practices, the distribution practices, and trying to make a packaged product out for the customer. That is really tough to do. It's really tough to have a story that is consistent enough and true and aligned with your values while supply chains are changing. You're in that ever-growing market, trying to figure out how to scale and make sure your story scales with you. So I think that's been a big problem for us as we've grown, and figuring out how do we scale and keep true to our story. As we all know, it's not easy to do organic, it's not easy to do regenerative, and we know that agricultural systems take a long time to change. And so making sure that you plan ahead when you're thinking about, all right, if I want to grow and double in size, how does my supply chain keep up with me? And if they can't necessarily do that right away, how do I work with them to get where we need to go? Because I can't do it alone. I'm not working in a silo. And so I have to work with everyone along the line, the retailers, we have the farmers on boots on the ground, we have the distributor. So
Yeah, it's a very complex proposition just all the way around. So I want to talk a little bit about developing partnerships, because I think that's so integral to this process. So what are some of the considerations that you have in finding supplier partners?
first one, this is more of a personal life choice. I spend most of my time in the waking day working, and I want to make sure the people I work with, I enjoy. It's really important for me to get along and understand who someone is that I'm working with, and that is your farming partners, that's your distributor relationships, that your supply chain, your packaging suppliers. And when it comes to regenerative and organic, at the end of the day, there are certifiers, there is ways to test and understand, but at the end of the day, it's a system built on trust. It is knowing that I know that someone has an organic heart. Someone has a regenerative ethic to the way they do their business, because I'm not the only business in my supply chain. I don't own every farming plot. I don't own every distributor relationship that I work with. And so I have to really trust that the story I'm being told and the story that I've seen, boots on the ground, is still the story day after day. And so making sure that you know and you respect and you understand your supply chain, really important. Also in a partnership, someone that invites you in. You should be able to visit and check out every farming community, every distributor, every warehouse you work with. Show up, ask good questions, have a good time, but don't bow and listen to a story just because it matches your marketing team's interests. It is so easy to just tell ourselves a story and amplify that story. And when you're 2 or 3 degrees of separation from the actual story, all of a sudden you're in a lie. And it's no one's individual fault that you're in the lie, but nothing substitutes getting on a flight or getting on a train or getting on a bus and showing up and looking at something for yourself, boots on the ground.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I know everybody thinks that, it's enough to just look at the paperwork or whatever, but it's life-changing to go and do these things and see it firsthand. So, yeah, great answer. Now, to finish off here, I'd just like to see if you can offer any advice to other brands starting out on this sustainability journey.
Get a good sidekick or a right hand, because it's going to be a tough journey. We all know business is tough. CPG is really tough. And then being on the forefront of both of those places and being on the regenerative and organic side of things is even more tough. And so get friends in the industry. There are tons of people out there that want to see this. We want to see it. We know it has to succeed. We do not want to live in a world where regenerative organic is not the standard. And so there are plenty of people out here that are on that journey. So my first piece of advice is find some friends, find a partner to go in business with, or jump into that adventure. You don't want to do it alone. There's so many times I've been up at 1 a.m. working on something and looking to my left and saying, oh, my partner's here working on this too. And that is a relief to not be in that alone. And other pieces of advice. Make sure you're into it. You gotta love the food. You gotta love what you do. If you don't eat the fruits of your labor, it's not worth doing. You need to love the industry you're in. You don't need to love all the work you do, but you need to love the industry you're working towards. And school up. Educate yourself on all of these practices. There are so many stories around regenerative and organic that we've told ourselves, that we've heard light in, that we mostly get from marketing campaigns with alternative agendas. You gotta put all that aside and you gotta go back to your basics. What is agriculture? How do carbon emissions show up? Both my partner and I, who started the company, we have an education in environmental science and sustainable business. By all means, it's changed since I was in school and I probably could learn more, but that foundation allows you to ask hard questions and know what you don't know, or at least know that you have a lot more to learn. So I think that that's a really important part.
Yeah, that is absolutely right, even for me. I mean, the more I look at this, the more I realize how little I know. So anyway, as promised, we said we would open this up to you, the audience, and the whole panel to pose your questions as well. I have a long list of questions. I can go on and on, but let me get the mic here, and we'll see if, okay, let's see. I'll go around. Sorry. So, do we have any questions from you all in the audience? Yes. Hang on just a sec.
I have a quick question for Crystal. At what point do you introduce your sourcing data or your certifications to prospective retailers or distributors?
Yeah, am I on? Okay, I can hear myself. So I'm going to give you the professional response and then the Crystal response. The professional response is ultimately the point in which you expose some of the more behind the scenes data is when you think that will bolster your relationship. So similar to what we were talking about in terms of knowing your business and staying educated on the marketplace, I think the same could and should be said about knowing your supply chain, knowing how each one of your customers operates, and then finding the advantageous point in which to share that information. I mentioned Whole Foods sustainability report. That's public. I didn't have access to that because I'm in sustainability. It's published right on their website. Now the Crystal response is, are you a supplier? Do you supply to downstream customers? Okay, cool. When it's going to make you money. So we understand that there is both a social responsibility to save the planet, but also an opportunity. And any of you are fans of The Office, Michael Scott says that in conflict resolution, there can be a win-win-win scenario. I see sustainability as that. I come from very humble beginnings and understand that sustainability is not necessarily accessible. So when you can access it and when you can celebrate it, you should also take advantage of it. Because ultimately what that does is just promotes more people to be sustainable and promotes you to become more sustainable as a business as well. So does that answer your question? Okay, cool.
Great. Anyone else? Oh.
Okay, so it's on the entrepreneurial side. I do understand that you were trying to bring something unique and a small brand. I don't know how big you are right now. You are trying to do the right way of things and navigate a system that is designed to work with ultra-processed foods and bigger retailers, big distributors. How do you keep that mission in the beginning when you don't have that much leverage? And you communicate your story and find your way. Like, do you keep just working with the retailers that are more aligned with your, mission or values? Or how do you navigate this?
Great question. You can start where you can, right? In some places, packaging is one of the hardest places to start as a small business. Food can be a little bit more difficult. Funny story, I haven't checked this, but I think we had the smallest certified organic warehouse in the US ever. It was a 10 by 10 closet that we got organic certified year one of starting the business. We had a little co-op kitchen and we certified a little 10 by 10 and worked with about 10 different international suppliers to combine 3 pallets of 12 different products, and we did our own import. So in that example, ask for an exception. Tell them your story and what you're trying to do, and ask these big partners to make an exception to the rules. And you'd be surprised how willing people are to make an exception for people who are starting out. Because businesses know how hard it is to start. Now, that's not going to work everywhere, but don't be afraid to ask. And don't be afraid to make it really known your mission and what you're trying to do. And then be willing to hear no, but don't invite no right away.
I feel like that's the story of like Steve Jobs and Apple that you just told. So
I think that's a story of so many things, right? I've always told my kids, you can ask for anything. You can ask for anything. I got $1 million of interest-free money for a little tiny community in Maine by going to the organization and asking for it. They said, "What do you need?" I said, "That's what I need," and they provided it. Because nobody's ever asked for it before or demonstrated the need, and they can always say no. But if you don't ask, you don't get.
Right.
I want to throw one out here. We were talking about this earlier, and we think it's kind of a doozy, and maybe you all want to weigh in as well. We were talking about the long game in sustainability and whether we're really framing it the right way for where we are right now, which is, one could argue that we've gone well past the point of where sustainability is really enough. Just sustaining is enough. So what do we really need to lean into to take this the next step? And I throw it out to any one of you.
Well, I have my own personal opinion about this, and you know what they say about opinions. So, sustainability is strange, and I made a comment earlier about how I mean, my mom was a school bus driver and my dad was a logger in Oregon, so I come from very blue collar, very humble background. I think that the difficult thing about sustainability that I see is that accessibility point. It is not easy to be sustainable. Just like it's not easy to find a business partner that shares value, you have to spend time, and if not time, money, and then you have to like figure out how much is your time worth. So I think ultimately, for those of us that have the advantage to push beyond the boundaries, let's just call standard boundaries of sustainability, then hell yeah, you should, and you should be surrounded by people that challenge you, just like any other good like life choice. However, I think that grace should be given, and I think that patience and education and enablement should be given to those that don't have the ability to kind of push those boundaries. So it's the best non-answer answer that I can give you, which is it is no wrong answers. It really just determines on who you are, your capacity to operate, and your experience. And I think that that could be said about a lot of things in life too, not just sustainability.
I'm gonna chime in here with
Yep.
something could also be applied to
Please.
relationship advice, probably.
It's dating.
Yeah, it's a yes and situation. Yes, sustainability is great. I think it's a really important active part of the conversation. And what else should we be striving toward? I don't think the end all be all goal is sustainability. I don't think our status quo is where we want to be, but it's a great place for the Hershey's and the Nestle's to catch up to. And that the smaller, more innovative spaces need to push well beyond that. Because with size, like smaller size comes agility, it comes more critical discussions around what the future can be. And I think our decisions today are deciding where we want to change culture and where do we want culture to move to. So I think sustainability is great. I think we have a much bigger conversation that's a few steps ahead of that. And for a lot of people here, I think I want sustainability front and center, and then I want a side group that's talking about step 2.
So I have two quick examples. Okay. I heard about a company that was growing organic tea, right? Because people wanted organic tea, they didn't want the pesticides. But in order to grow this organic tea, they had to use organic fertilizer. So now they had to get the cow in the picture who made the organic fertilizer. So they had to clear trees to make the cow, to make, and that this, by the time they were done, is this product really helping the planet? That was a big question. I thought, how do you take a look at the big picture before you just dive in? That's one piece. On the other hand, there's a group called, I think it's called Climate Foods, and they've taken a look at what's happening with really regenerative and how do you promote that, right? And so they've taken a rye, type of ryegrass that you can be turned into a grain, and they've said, okay, we can grow this. It sequesters carbon in the soil. It actually pulls carbon out of the air, puts it back in the soil. It uses a little bit of water to grow. But who's making products with this grain? Nobody. So they said, all right, so we have to start making the product. So they're building their own, not just supply chain, but they're building their own product at the other end to say, okay, we can make, and what do people, I think they're making cookies because it uses up the grain that they're now growing sustainably and regeneratively at the other end. So they're building the entire chain, but they've also done a great job of communicating. This 1 acre of this grain sequesters X amount of tons of carbon, which is the equivalent of like 100 cars operating for a year, or whatever the analogy is, right? They've got that down, so it's quick and easy consumer communication, it's got a finished product, and it's got the raw material. So they're doing an excellent job.
Which just adds on to your point about like partnering with the right people. Like part of that is also the folks that are going to celebrate the wins with you.
That's right.
Not just the hard work, but also like, hey, how do we share the, like, how does everyone win in this one, specific type of sustainability story?
Yep. So cool.
We'll do one more, but we are just about out of time.
So since we're talking about sustainability more broadly, I'm just wondering, how do you guys feel about the fundamental principles of a B Corp?
I couldn't hear could you repeat the question?
A B Corp.
Could you repeat the question?
How do you feel about a B
Sorry.
Corp?
Oh, a B Corp.
So since we're talking about sustainability more broadly, I'm wondering how you guys feel about the fundamental principles of a B Corp.
Go ahead.
Personally, I think that B Corp certification serves two purposes. One, I don't know if you've seen like the back end of like an actual certification process. It's really freaking rigorous. Like there's a lot that they put you through in order to actually get that label. And then the other thing that I appreciate about a B Corp certification is it typically, like when I see it in the marketplace, it's smaller brands or like up and coming brands that have a really good story to tell. And that story, that audience is consumers. And what I think lacks a lot in sustainability is that separation between business, like commercial and consumer. And what I think that's really great about brands that are able to communicate their certifications, whether it's organic, rock, or even B Corp, is that they're able to share, like talking about sharing the sustainability win, not just with their commercial partners, but with their consumer partners as well. I buy things, I want to know that what I'm doing, it has a purpose, and if I get a B Corp certification product that I purchase or an organic product that I purchase, then that makes me feel good, and I continue to do that. So it's this, again, cycle of never ending, like feeling good about things, contributing to something bigger and better, and then also like, let's make some money in the meantime.
Just to add in, full support on B Corp. I think that with scale of any business size, you lose a lot of transparency. And so I think that these certifications, B Corp being a great example, they add a level of validation that increases trust.
Totally.
That's it. That said, once again, it's still about trust. You have to trust the brand. B Corp, they're only auditing once a year, sometimes with some gaps. It's mostly about what you say you're doing, and it's not it's not a turnkey, absolutely like rock solid cert, but it's a great validation, and I think it's a great step for people that need a little bit more trust in their supply chain.
Good answer.
Okay, anyone else want to weigh in there? Okay. All right, well, we are going to have to leave it there. Thank you all for joining us. Thanks to our panel. Great discussion. I did have some takeaways up there. You can get the slides on the website through your app or through the SupplySide website. And please go to SupplySide Food and Beverage Journal and SupplySide Supplement Journal, where you can see more content about sustainability under supply chain sustainability stories. So thank you again and have a great show. And thank you again to our underwriters.